Ladies and gentlemen, I've woke up this morning to my position stopped out and my throat very, very sore. So God has cursed me today. Bear with me on my articulation and tone in this video. It's just because I'm a little bit sick. But as I said, I've been stopped out of my position. We made some predictions over the last 2 days. Bitcoin will go to 38.5K. Unfortunately, we've gone upwards, and we've gone upwards based on slightly unpredictable news events in regards to ETFs. We had very many that we'll look at in a second, 5 or 6 separate things going on with ETFs that were released just about 12 hours ago from the time of uploading this video that led Bitcoin to see a bit of a miraculous recovery. And with that miraculous recovery comes a new question. Is Bitcoin bound to keep recovering and go up higher, or is Bitcoin still bound to go lower? Let's take a look at the price action today and see what I think. Guys, let's get into it. Guys, as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm very, very sick. My throat is not feeling too well, so you might notice my voice is a little bit weak today, potentially. And for that reason, I'm going to try to keep the video short, but I just want to get this out, get this information out to you because it's quite important. So I'll keep it short, keep it sweet, and get the information relayed to you. Guys, over the last couple of days on Bitcoin, we made some claims that turned out to be incorrect. Now, I believe the TA backing for the claims are completely valid. I would make the claims again. I believe that when it comes to TA, there's only so much you can do. TA is not a certain analysis form. There's no such thing as certain analysis. There's such thing as certain predictions, but I think we took the best possible data we could and extrapolated the best way we possibly could. The claims we made were over the last 2 days in these videos here. Essentially, we noted the RSI breakdown stemming back from October 12th. We see this RSI support line right here going through on these few candle wicks right here. 4 separate retests, very, very valid. We closed a daily candle below the RSI line. Unfortunately, the TA was perfect. Everything was looking well. We reached our first target, but we got stopped out because we had a barrage of news coming in about the SEC in relation to the ETF decision. This is just stuff that unfortunately you can't really predict. You can't really take too seriously for that reason. And ultimately, you can't really be too angry when it all goes wrong because of it. We had, the futures ETF for Ethereum being delayed. We had Coinbase petitioning, or you can just read out the news here. Coinbase petitions court to review SEC for denial of its request for crypto rules, which is another big thing that happened there. SEC delayed the Ethereum ETF for both VanEck and also for Grayscale for futures, and for VanEck it was spot. And then we had 21 shares in ARK filing an updated version of its spot ETF. We had the US court ordering Binance to pay $2.7 billion. We had BlackRock filing an updated version for its spot ETF. We had WisdomTree doing the same. We had Bitcoin ETF for 21 shares, ARK adding to the DTCC website. So obviously all of that news coming in within a couple of hours has led Bitcoin to act irrationally. And I say irrationally not to avoid responsibility for the fact that my prediction ended up being incorrect, but I say irrationally because the fact of the matter is the TA can only take you so far, and sometimes you have to accept that TA is wrong, right? There's a reason why triangles only have 74% chances of breaking certain directions. And a descending triangle an ascending triangle, for example, has a 72% chance of breaking to the upside. There's a reason why the other 28% chance exists, because sometimes it just doesn't work out. So although we've been wrong in our prediction, although we got stopped out, I'm happy to stand by what I said as the correct prediction at the time. I'm also not willing, and this is where I get into this video's content, right? I'm not willing to step away from my short-term bearish claims just yet. I don't think it's reasonable to do so. We have not actually seen, if we go ahead and remove the daily candle we're on right now, and we just look at the daily candle that's actually closed, we've only just barely seen a break back above the RSI support line. We've just barely seen a break above it, and we haven't actually broken above the nearest resistance zone above it yet. For example, the nearest resistance zone above this ascending support line sits here at around 43.3k, sorry. 43.4k, apologies. And you can see we were rejected from that over here just a couple of days ago, or a week ago, I should say. We're rejected from it here again. We haven't actually broken to the upside yet. So although for the most part, it does look like the TA is flipped back into a short-term bullish mode, we have to consider the fact that we have not seen a break of the higher high yet. We are still, technically speaking, in a short-term downwards trend because we haven't seen a higher high, right? Our recent high before the recent drop downwards was a lower high, so we actually entered a short-term downwards trend. We also saw massive amount of turbulence in relation to this support zone that held up Bitcoin for almost close to a month since the 27th of November. So I'm not willing to sit here and say that Bitcoin in the short term is bullish yet, but I certainly do think that this recovery was excellent, although it was driven by basically unpredictable news events. The fact of the matter is it did occur. The fact of the matter is the recovery itself is excellent, but we will have to monitor Bitcoin over the next couple of days, because when you see a recovery based on news events, you generally see that sometimes it's not actually reflected in the days to come further, because the buying momentum was short-term rather than extended, rather than prolonged. And so we could actually see a drop back down below this RSI line, and hence a drop back downwards below this yellow line on Bitcoin, and a continuation downwards as we are in a short-term downwards trend. But as I said, for the most part, it's good. It's certainly good news. It certainly shows a degree of strength on Bitcoin. You can see, just looking at the hourly chart here, some sort of double bottom formation in play. The neckline is right here. If we break 43.4k, we will be pretty much in the clear to retest these highs, and that will look pretty good for Bitcoin from that point onwards. Perhaps there is a chance we see something like what we saw in November 2021, right, which is when we saw an upwards trend. The first high saw a correction. We saw the second high a little bit higher and then went downwards. We could see something like that, but it's very hard to make any claims on that at this point. The reason why I say that, the reason why I even point that out, is because we do know that a pre-halving correction on Bitcoin is something that does look likely. We've looked at the monthly chart quite extensively in the past. I'll briefly look at it again. So this red line on the screen is the Ichimoku Cloud baseline on the monthly chart. All you need to do is look at the Bitcoin historical price action to see how important this has been. Whenever we've been below it, we've been in the bear market. Whenever we've been above it, we've been in the bull market. Right now, we are testing it for resistance. We have not broken above it yet. And what you'll notice is that the last time we were testing this for resistance properly was back here in June 2019, in the same part of the cycle that we are in now. We know that Bitcoin acts cyclically. The fact that we're testing it just like what we were in 2019 after a big move to the upside is quite worrying in a sense, because it does leave open the possibility that Bitcoin could close underneath this month and start a pre-halving correction, just like we did in 2019, starting from now, right? Starting from 42k. I am very much open to that possibility, and I think it's actually relatively supported to an extent. I'm not willing to make it a prediction because it's not a trend, but it is an observation that I can make from the last cycle that is objectively true. And so if we do close this monthly candle below 42k, we will probably most likely be entering a pre-halving correction for an extended period of time. And if we break above it, we will actually be in a pretty bullish circumstance for Bitcoin, because the only time, you know, we've ever really historically gotten above this thing, it's led to bull markets, right? We got above it here in 2016, it led to a bull market, got above it here in 2020, led to a bull market. So if we get above it again on this month here in 17 days and the candle close, or 12 days I should say, that's going to be very good. That's going to lead to Bitcoin going upwards, perhaps a little bit preemptively, but going upwards nevertheless. And that could be supported by the ETF decisions that will be coming shortly. But, you know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I do want to make sure people actually are checking in with reality. We have seen, you know, 8 consecutive green weekly candles, other than last week, which is our first red candle. It's not obscene at all to predict that maybe the correction would stem from something like where we are now at 44k, right? That's not an obscene claim to make. I also have been very persistent, and anyone who's watched my channel for any period of time now will know this. I've been very persistent in constantly outlining, even yesterday, even when my prediction yesterday was wrong, I constantly outlined the possibility that we could go to 48k before starting any proper pre-halving correction. I keep saying that because it's very important, and it's true, right? It's true because if we look at the volume profile, all right, which is basically looking at where the buying and selling has historically happened on Bitcoin, we can see the next major spike in the volume profile on the right-hand side of the screen is 48k. There's nothing in between that level. It's 48k, and then it's 38.5k minus the recent price action right down here. So I have been very persistent in constantly reminding you that we could very well just irrationally zoom upwards to 48k, even though the price action is clearly exhausted, evidently exhausted. You know, bearish divergence for close to 2 months now, volume decreasing in this upwards trend for close to 2.5 months. The price action is exhausted, there's no doubt about it. But even with that exhaustion, we can just continue to power to the upside. And this is what we've seen, you know, even today, right? Looking at the irrationalities in this price action. The fact of the matter is this price action was irrational. The fact of the matter is this pump we saw from these lows down here at 40.5k starting just 8 hours ago, 12, 16 hours ago, they were irrational. It's an irrational pump. Doesn't make sense. The reason it doesn't make sense is because we saw a breakdown of the upwards trend, a breakdown of the RSI support that lasted for close to 2 months, after bearish divergence, after volume decreasing in the upwards trend for a long period of time. But sometimes, as I said, the news events, the narratives that surround Bitcoin will overpower the TA. And this is something that's been especially true throughout the entirety of 2023. You guys will know better than me. If you've been in the crypto market for this year, for any period of time, you'll know how, how really just quite a bit of a plague this ETF narrative has been on Bitcoin TA. I'm not complaining. Bitcoin's up massively, and my long-term predictions are very much valid, and they've been working perfectly. And for the most part, we've been very accurate in this YouTube channel this year. But even with that said, I think any analyst who spends any time looking at TA will tell you that this ETF narrative, this ETF news constantly coming out every other day, there's news coming out of the ETF, screwing up the price action, screwing up the structures. Fact of the matter is, it's been a bit of a plague in the TA. And I think for the most part, a lot of us will actually be very happy to see it end. And I'm pretty glad it's coming to an end shortly. January 10th is the deadline. I made a post. I highly recommend you go read it yesterday. And it's still very much valid. This post right here on my YouTube community page. I'm going to read it out to you right now. It's very important to note this kind of thing, right? ETF is obviously long-term bullish, guys. It's obviously long-term bullish, right? In the price action, fundamentally, it's certainly not. But in the price action, it's obviously long-term bullish. It will lead to more buying momentum, more avenues for buying. But for example, it could lead to things like excess regulation. It could lead to things like exchanges getting banned. So, the question is, when you say it's long-term bullish, what do you mean by long-term? What is your scope here? Are you looking at the next year, or are you looking long-term, like the next decade? Because I don't think this is actually long-term bullish in any regard. I can see it being bullish for the next year or two. But, looking at the ETF approval itself, right? I'm going to read this out to you. The same people who constantly claim the majority is always wrong are claiming for an ETF approval that will pump Bitcoin to all-time highs. In the short term, I'm saying. I hate to shatter your bias, but 1. Most people who are paying any attention to the ETF decision have already bought, anticipating the approval. Therefore, it's priced in. And 2, the ETF approval will increase buying pressure long term, but no ETF buying will come immediately at the point of approval. When people say the majority is always wrong, like it actually means anything in relation to price action, what they actually mean is the majority is always wrong except when I am in the majority. It's just words, it means nothing. I'm not saying the suspected ETF approval won't lead to a pump. I'm saying by no means whatsoever is it guaranteed. And that is 100% facts right there. The fact of the matter is, no one knows exactly what will happen on the short-term relief of the ETF news. Look, every single person in this market expects ETFs to be approved. There's very little argument for them being denied. All right? That's just a reality. The vast, vast majority of people expect ETFs to be approved. Right? If you accept that, you will accept inherently that based on how the markets work, it's priced in to a certain extent. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to pump when they release. It just means that the whole narrative that Bitcoin's going to pump to 100K on January 10th when they're finally approved is a ridiculous narrative. And it certainly means that denying any possibility of a sell the news event when these ETFs are released is, again, a ridiculous thing to say. There could very well be a sell the news event. I'm not saying the long-term momentum won't be bullish, but look, the fact of the matter is, as I said in the post, ETFs being approved does not line up the same day with ETFs being released to public buying. Okay, that's not how it works. So the only people who will be buying based on the ETF news itself will be people already acting in the market independently of the ETF funds themselves. They'll be buying based on exchanges, selling on exchanges, things like that. So everyone who would be doing that on the day is already aware about ETFs, and since the vast majority of people already think they're going to be approved, they've probably already done their buying down in this price region over here when this move started, or on the way up. Look, I'm not overly convinced about this immediate short-term ETF event leading to this massive pump on Bitcoin. I think there's definitely a possibility it could occur, but my point is, I'm trying to kind of shatter the bias going on in the market right now. It's not certain by any means, and at the end of the day, you can't trust things like this. We've seen even in the last 24 hours, right? Yes, my prediction I made in yesterday's video, we're going to go down to 38K. I was technically wrong, although it is still pending, I will say, because we haven't broken the high yet, so it is technically not invalidated yet, but for the most part, it's not looking good. What I will say is this. That prediction, as I've said before in this video, was the most logical thing I could have ever given based on the analysis at the time, and I don't think that there would be any reason for me to predict anything otherwise at the time. I would have done it again, and I will do it again based on the same TM methods, because you can't predict news events. News events are speculative, they're random, they're very, very unpredictable, they come at random times as well. That's something people don't consider, right? There's a very decent probability that the ETF release, for example, the ETF approval, won't actually happen on January 10th. It could happen tomorrow, right? So here's the thing, it's like, how do you know not only what it's going to do to the price action when it occurs, but you don't even know when it's going to happen. So at the end of the day, the best thing you can possibly do is just trust the charts on all metrics. Because although an ascending triangle only breaks for the upside 72% of the time and has a 28% chance of failure, the fact of the matter is that's only a 28% chance of failure. And 3 times out of 4, you're going to be correct if you trust it. So guys, with that said, I'll end the video. I'm sorry if it's been sloppy in terms of my deliverance. I'm sorry if I haven't had a particularly clear point. I've just tried to give you an update to the price action. Again, I'm feeling very, very sick. Guys, like usual, the VIP group is on Telegram. If you want to trade altcoins with me, we have an 80.5% win rate there. It's been absolutely exceptional. Check it out. We also have the Bingx and Bitget exchange. If you want a place to buy and sell cryptocurrency, both have very, very low trading fees, and all the details of those are in the description below, including my referral links for trading fee discounts for life. So save money using my links there. And finally, the Crypto Academy Become a Trader 10-unit course will teach you everything you need to know about trading. The contact details are on the website. You can find all of those things in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you tomorrow. Cheers.